What if two people earning the exact same salary, working the exact same hours, could end up 20 years later living in completely different financial worlds? One retires early, owns his home outright, sleeps easy. The other is 58, still working, still stressed, still one bad month away from panic, despite making, dollar for dollar, the same income his whole life. We assume the difference has to be luck, or investment knowledge, or some secret advantage one of them had and the other didn't. But here's the uncomfortable truth almost nobody tells you. The biggest predictor of who builds wealth and who doesn't isn't income. It isn't intelligence. It isn't even opportunity. It's psychology. And by the end of this video, you're going to see your own financial decisions in a completely different light, because most of the money mistakes that quietly keep people broke were never really about money at all. Let's start with the assumption almost everyone makes, that more income solves the problem. Get a raise and things get easier. Make more, worry less. Except that's not what actually happens. Study after study on income and happiness, on income and savings rates, reveals something strange. As people earn more, they don't typically save proportionally more. They spend more, not because they're careless, but because of something so common it has a name: lifestyle inflation. Here's how it actually plays out in real life. Someone gets a raise. Their first instinct isn't reckless spending, it's reasonable upgrading. A slightly better apartment. A nicer car because the old one felt embarrassing to drive to the new job. More takeout because now they can afford to skip cooking. Each decision on its own feels completely justified. Nobody wakes up and decides to sabotage their financial future. They just make one comfortable upgrade after another, and their expenses quietly rise to meet, and often slightly exceed, their income. The result is a strange kind of treadmill. You run faster, you earn more, but you never actually get anywhere because the ground beneath you is moving at the same speed. This is why someone making 4 times the median income can still feel financially stretched. The number changed, the feeling of scarcity didn't. So if income isn't the deciding factor, what is? To understand that, we need to look at something far older than money itself, the way your brain is wired to handle time. Imagine someone offers you $50 today or $100 a year from now. Even though waiting is clearly the better deal, you're doubling your money. A huge number of people take the $50 right now. This is called present bias, and it's one of the most powerful, least understood forces in personal finance. Your brain treats the present moment as urgent and real, and the future as vague and uncertain, almost like it's happening to a stranger, not to you. This is why saving for retirement feels so unnatural. You're not being asked to help yourself. You're being asked to sacrifice for a version of you that feels distant, abstract, and honestly, a little unreal. This single bias explains so much seemingly irrational behavior. Why people carry credit card debt at 20-something% interest while their retirement account sits untouched. Why I'll start saving next month somehow becomes the plan for years in a row. It's not laziness. It's a brain doing exactly what it evolved to do, prioritize now over later, because for most of human history, later wasn't guaranteed. And spending doesn't just satisfy present bias, it actively rewards you for it. When you buy something, your brain releases dopamine, the chemical associated with anticipation and reward. That new phone, that impulse purchase, that I deserve this dinner out for a few minutes or a few hours, it genuinely feels good. But here's the part almost nobody tells you. Dopamine isn't really about pleasure, it's about anticipation. The high point isn't owning the thing, it's the moment right before you get it, which is why the feeling fades so fast. You buy the item, the excitement peaks, and within days, sometimes hours, it's just another object you own. Your brain, chasing that next spike, starts looking for the next purchase. Now compare that to investing. When you put money into an index fund, there's no dopamine hit, no unboxing moment, no immediate gratification. In fact, for the first while, it often feels like nothing happened at all. You just have less spending money and a number on a screen that barely moves. Investing is, neurologically speaking, boring. And human brains are not wired to prioritize boring, delayed rewards over exciting, immediate ones. This is why so many financially literate people who know they should invest, still struggle to actually do it consistently. It's not an information problem. It's that spending is engineered by your own brain chemistry to feel good right now, and investing is engineered to feel like nothing at all, at least until decades later when it suddenly means everything. There's a second force working against your future self, and it's arguably even stronger than present bias. It's called loss aversion, and it might be the single most underrated concept in behavioral economics. Here's the idea: losing $100 doesn't just feel bad, it feels roughly twice as bad as gaining $100 feels good. The pain of loss and the pleasure of gain are not equal and opposite. Loss hits far harder. This explains so much strange financial behavior. Why people hold onto a losing stock way longer than they should. Hopping it comes back, instead of cutting their losses, because selling locks in the loss, and a locked-in loss hurts more than a loss you can still pretend is temporary. Why people avoid checking their investment accounts during a market downturn, even though staying informed would help them make better decisions, because every glance at red numbers triggers real emotional pain. And loss aversion doesn't just affect investors during a crash, it affects everyday saving, because putting money into a retirement account doesn't feel like gaining future security, it feels like losing spending power today. The gain is abstract and distant, the loss is immediate and concrete. Your brain, given the choice between a guaranteed small discomfort now and a possible large benefit decades from now, will very often choose to avoid the discomfort. Now add another layer: you don't make financial decisions in isolation. You make them while constantly, often unconsciously, comparing yourself to the people around you. This is social comparison, and in the world of money, it shows up as status spending. The car you buy isn't just transportation, it's a signal. The vacation you post isn't just a trip, it's a statement. And the uncomfortable truth is that a huge amount of spending in modern life isn't driven by need or even genuine desire. It's driven by a subconscious calculation about how we'll be perceived by people whose opinions, if we're honest, probably won't matter to us in 5 years. This becomes especially dangerous in investing, where social comparison has a specific, brutal name: FOMO, the fear of missing out. When an asset is rising fast, when everyone around you seems to be making easy money, staying rational suddenly feels irrational. Watching from the sidelines while others appear to get rich triggers something close to physical discomfort. This is exactly how bubbles form, and exactly how they trap smart, capable people. Someone who would never normally make an impulsive financial decision starts buying an overheated asset, not because they've done careful analysis, but because the social and emotional pressure of watching others win becomes unbearable. And when the crash inevitably comes, that same emotional system flips into panic, and the same person sells at the worst possible moment, locking in devastating losses driven by fear instead of any decision driven by strategy. This is one of the most important truths this video can offer you. Emotional investing during bubbles and crashes isn't a failure of intelligence. Doctors, engineers, even professional traders have fallen into these exact traps, because market psychology doesn't care how many degrees you have, it exploits the same ancient wiring in everyone. Which brings us to a question worth sitting with directly. If smart people can still make catastrophically bad money decisions, what actually separates people who build wealth from people who don't? It's rarely raw intelligence. It's something closer to a different operating system for thinking about money entirely, what we might call rich thinking versus poor thinking. And this has nothing to do with class or background, it's a mental framework. Poor thinking in this psychological sense treats money as something to be consumed, a resource that exists to solve today's problem, satisfy today's desire, relieve today's stress. Rich thinking treats money as something to be deployed, a tool whose value comes not from what it buys right now, but from what it can become over time. This shows up most clearly in one simple but profound distinction: the difference between assets and liabilities. An asset puts money into your pocket over time. A liability takes money out of your pocket over time, even if it looks impressive while it's doing it. Here's what makes this genuinely tricky. A liability doesn't feel like a liability while you're buying it. A new car feels like success. A bigger house feels like a rival. But if that car is losing value every month while draining your bank account through payments, insurance, and maintenance, it's quietly making you poorer while looking like you're doing better. Meanwhile, an asset, a rental property, a stock portfolio, a small business, often looks completely unglamorous while it's actually working. Nobody is impressed by an index fund, but the index fund is the one actually building your future, while the car is depreciating in a driveway. This is where delayed gratification becomes the real superpower, far more than any specific investment strategy. The single most consistent trait among people who build lasting wealth isn't a genius stock pick or a secret formula. It's the demonstrated ability to sacrifice a smaller reward now for a significantly larger reward later, over and over for years, sometimes decades, often without any visible proof along the way that it's working. But here's the twist that changes everything. Relying on delayed gratification through willpower alone is a losing strategy. Willpower is not a stable, unlimited resource. It fluctuates with stress, with sleep, with how hard your day was. If your financial plan depends on you making the disciplined choice every single day, forever, you are setting yourself up to fail not because you're weak, but because that's simply not how human motivation works. This is why the people who actually build wealth consistently rely on something far more powerful than motivation. They rely on systems. A system removes the decision entirely. An automatic transfer that moves money into investments the moment your paycheck arrives means you never have to consciously choose to save that month. The choice was already made once in advance, back when you had the clearest head and the most motivation. Compare that to trying to manually transfer money to savings at the end of each month, after you've already been exposed to a month's worth of temptations, ads, and impulsive urges. One approach fights your psychology every single day, the other only has to overcome it once. This single shift from relying on willpower to relying on automated systems might be the most practical, most underrated wealth-building strategy that exists. Not because it's clever, because it's honest about how human beings actually behave under pressure, stress, and temptation. But there's one final layer underneath all of this, quieter than the rest, and in some ways more powerful than everything we've covered so far: identity. The way you think of yourself directly shapes your financial habits, often without your awareness. If someone sees themselves as bad with money, they will unconsciously make choices that confirm that identity, avoiding their bank statements, skipping the budgeting conversation, spending impulsively because that's just who I am with money anyway. If someone sees themselves as the kind of person who invests, checking a portfolio, reading a financial article, or automating a contribution doesn't feel like effort. It feels like simply being consistent with who they already are. This is why financial change is so much harder than just learning new information, and why so many people can read every finance book available and still not change their behavior. You're not just changing your knowledge. You're trying to change a self-concept that your mind has spent years, sometimes an entire lifetime, working hard to protect, because a stable identity, even a financially destructive one, feels safer to your brain than the uncertainty of becoming someone completely new. This also explains a phenomenon that confuses almost everyone: why so many lottery winners, or people who receive a large sudden inheritance, end up broke again within just a few years. The money changed overnight. The identity underneath it, the actual person making every single decision about that money, did not change at all. So if wealth isn't really built through income, or intelligence, or a single lucky break, how is it actually built? The honest answer is almost anticlimactic: consistency and automation, applied quietly for a very long time, without needing constant motivation to keep it going. It's the person who invests the same modest amount every single month for 25 years, through market crashes, recoveries, booms, and bear markets, never trying to time anything, never needing to feel excited about it. It's the person who treats paying their future self first as non-negotiable as paying rent, not because they have superhuman discipline, but because they built a system that never required daily discipline in the first place. Wealth, in the end, isn't usually the result of one brilliant decision. It's the result of never having to make the same good decision over and over again, because the system was already making it for you. So here's the real question this video was always building toward. If it isn't income, and it isn't intelligence, and it isn't luck, then what's actually standing between you and the version of your life you want? It's not a stock, it's not a business idea, it's not a secret investment strategy nobody's told you about yet. It's the quiet, constant psychological negotiation happening inside your own mind every single time money is involved, between the part of you chasing comfort right now and the part of you trying to protect someone who doesn't exist yet, your future self. The people who build extraordinary financial lives aren't the ones who have defeated every temptation through sheer force of will. They're the ones who stopped needing to fight that battle every day because they built systems, shifted their identity, and made peace with delayed reward, so that good financial decisions became less about willpower and more about who they'd simply become. Because the greatest investment you will ever make isn't a stock, a property, or a business. It's becoming someone who no longer has to fight their own psychology every single time a financial decision appears. That person isn't rich because of what they own. They're rich because of who they no longer have to convince.